Hey, welcome back to the channel, everybody. So I want to walk through RabbitMQ streams, and specifically I want to go through filtering on streams. So I have my solution running with a couple endpoints we're going to look at today. So I have a populate stream with the RabbitMQ client. So we're not going to be using the stream protocol today. We're just going to be using the client, which is AMQP 0.9.1. And then I have a get stream messages endpoint as well. So let me go ahead and execute this so I can build my RabbitMQ exchange and queue I need. So let's go ahead and refresh my instance. And I have my endpoint building out a car stream exchange that is bound to engine data.stream. So if we go to that, you can see that it's populated with 100,000 records, and that's what we just sent. So you can see that I do have this running in a cluster that we touched on in a last video, but it just has the basic configuration, really durable, execute type of stream, and the default of lease leaders for the leader location. So this is all good, right? So let me go to my other endpoint here, and let's actually go and fetch this data. So I do have it set up for timestamp based offset, so I'm just going to do -1, and I'm just going to leave my filter blank. I'm just going to put Z, it's because it's not even being used. So we'll go and execute that, and I think, all right, so I have it executing out to the console. It's just going to write out all those records, so it's going to get 100,000, which is quite a bit. We probably don't need that many, to be honest with you. So I'm going to actually go, now that we see this is running, I'm going to go actually and stop this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my service. And if we go to where I'm actually publishing the messages, I'm just going to scale this down to 10. So I'm going to bring this data way down, so that way it's a little bit more performant for the video. And I'm going to go ahead and actually go back to my stream. And what I'm going to do is go ahead and I'm just going to delete this queue just to make it easy on myself. And now I'm going to start my application again. And once that goes back up, I'm just going to republish those messages. So if I go back to RabbitMQ, now it's back. Now it should only have 10 messages. Okay, so that's going to be a little bit better I think, for the example. But you saw how fast 100,000 works too. It's just pretty nice. So you can see on the get, if I call a get, it'll just get all the data from the stream. So if we go back to where I'm actually specifying that, which is right here. So get messages, I have accepting days, and I will be implementing this filter value. But if we scroll down, I just have my QoS set to 1. I have my receiver with an event handler there to just do a basic ACK, and then it gets there and it prints the body out to the console. So that's all good. And then my offset is the days that I pass in the AMQP timestamp. So that looks good, and I think we can do this a little bit better if we add filtering. So what you have available to you inside of streams is the ability on your producer to specify this header value right here of extreme filter value, and then you can pass in whatever string you want. So let's go ahead, and what you have to do, I'm going to stop my solution here. So wherever you're specifying the message properties, for me it's this basic properties, and then I pass it into where I do my basic publish async. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to pass in headers, and we'll just say, new object headers is a, let's get the type here. Headers is a dictionary of string and object. So I guess we'll just match that signature exactly. And we'll just say new, and we're gonna add a element here. So it's gonna be x dot stream filter value And then for the key, or the value, is going to be that filter string that we passed in there. Oh, whoops. Huh. Hold on. Let me just get autocomplete to do this for me. There we go. Let me copy that back again. And we'll go here. And we'll pass in my filter. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and set a breakpoint here. Actually, let's not have a breakpoint there. Let's put a breakpoint on my consumer right before I acknowledge it right there. Okay, so now we're going to accept a filter value on the header of the message. So let's go ahead and start this again. Let's go back to my endpoint. So I'm going to populate the stream, and my filter, I guess we'll just put my name, and data will be okay. And so those were sent to RabbitMQ. Now those ones are going to have the header. So let's go ahead and get those messages. And again, it's not going to matter what filter we pass in yet, because we're not going to be specifying a filter on the consumer. But let's go ahead and get those. And I will have to step through this a couple times, because you can see, whoops, on the basic properties, the header. So this is the one that I had published before I published the header, right? So there's no filter header on this message. So I will have to step through this actually, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, so this one should have that header on there. So you can see that I have two headers. Now I have, you always get this offset, right? So this is the 10th offset position. And now I have this extreme filter value, and it's going to be, looks like it's just an array of bytes. So I do wonder, actually, if I have to encode that, perhaps. Maybe not. I don't know. Let's try not to first. But you saw where that header is. And let's go ahead and stop this. So now what we need to do is on the consumer. So jumping down here, you can see that my consumer already has the arguments stubbed out here, and this is where I pass in my offset. So what we need to do is we actually need to pass in an additional argument, and this one is going to be called x.stream.filter, and that's where we're going to pass in the filter that we have specified. So now we're going to pass in my arguments into my basic consume async. And so now let's go ahead and do this again, but let's go ahead and actually, instead of writing, well, I guess we can write it to the console. Sure, I probably should have changed the filter. So all right, what I'm going to do actually is, let's go back here. I'm going to delete this queue again to purge the messages. Let's go ahead and start this. So now our producer is sending that filter value, and our consumer is going to send that also in its arguments. So I will need to populate this again. And let's go into data. We're going to do, just to make it simple, we're going to have data Steven, filter Steven, and I'm going to go ahead and send those 10 messages up to RabbitMQ. Let's go and refresh, and okay. All right, so I have my consumer running here, so I'm going to go ahead and pass in still -1 for the days and Z as the filter, so it shouldn't bring back anything. So we're going to go and execute that. I do have a console read line on my consumer, so I will need to continue. But you can see nothing came back, which is what we expect, because no value as the Z as the filter. But if we pass in Steven as the filter value, we're going to go and execute that. You can see that now it pulls back those records. So now let's go ahead and continue this. So, whoops, not there, in there. Let's go actually publish some more data, but instead of my filter, we're just going to do test and then test for the filter, just keep it good. Let's go and execute that, send some more data to the stream. Now let's go ahead and run this again with Steven. And you can see that it still pulls back Steven, everything looks good. Okay, now let's change this to test, and let's execute that. And you can see that test now comes back in my set. So it's very, very powerful, and especially, you know, if you have a lot of data, you can see how this could be useful, you know, for just filtering. And what I'm going to do is let's go and just for fun, let's go ahead and modify my producer to send a lot of data so we can see the performance. And let's go ahead and send 100,000 records up just so we, you know, populate the stream, so we actually have a lot of data in there to see what the performance implications are. So I'm going to go ahead and publish this, but I'm not going to give this any filter. I'm just going to give this a filter of Z so we don't use it, and I'm just going to say test data as the data. So I'm going to execute that. It's going to populate the stream with 100,000 records, so you can see that it's done. So if you refresh this, we will see this jump dramatically. So now we have 100,020. And so now if I go back to my consumer, I'm going to do the same filter, test, and -1 for days. So let's execute that. And you can see that it's very, very fast still, which is excellent. So if we do that, Steven here, we execute that, we immediately get the results back. So very, very performant still. But let's continue to push this. So let's go and actually push a lot more data still. Let's just push a bunch of this Z filter. And now let's do ZZ just to, you know, diversify the filtering. So let's just try to push this to its limits, and we'll see what happens. So we're pushing, you know, 400,000, 500,000, 600,000, 700,000, 800,000, 900,000, and we should be up to 1 million. And you notice that I added just a Z to the filtering, so it's not going to be the same filter. So now we have these different, basically, you know, partitions in the data. So 100,000 will have ZZ, 100,000 will have ZZZ, and so on. So now we have 1,020,000, which is good. So now let's go back to my consumer, and let's try to get the data with my name again. And we can see that almost immediately it pulls back, so it's still extremely performant. So let's do test for that. It pulls back test. And again, it's just very, very fast, which is exciting to see. So, and again, this is RabbitMQ client. This is not the streams protocol. Well, so let's do ZZ for that. And you can see that I get that as well. I'm going to get about 100,000 records of that. So let's actually go ahead and cancel that. So, but as you can see, this is super powerful, but we're not completely done yet, because according to the RabbitMQ documentation, what they recommend doing is, if you go to your consumer, I believe they recommend wherever you're doing your consuming, you know, event handler, I believe they also recommend manually checking the header off of the messages, because apparently Bloom filters can produce false positives. So you're going to get data back, but according to the documentation, they say that you may get a false positive. So you may get data that doesn't belong in that filter set. So it looks like what they want you to do is, I don't know if it matters before the acknowledgement. Their documentation looks like it has before, but I guess you want to check, if EA, whoops, if EA dot basic properties dot headers oh, it looks like you can get and then you specify the X filter, what is it called again? X dot filter value here. Okay, we'll do equal to filter. So it looks like, depending on your use case, it may be required to add this as well. Not directly. You probably don't want to access the headers directly like that. You probably want to make it a little bit more safe. But just in general, the principle of accessing I guess they want you to manually check the header value to check that it actually is in fact equal to your specified filter. But again, that's just because of Bloom filters being able to potentially produce a false positive. So it's nothing to do with RabbitMQ, but it has to do with Bloom filters. So I would imagine that in like a practical, use case, you're still going to want to acknowledge, but maybe, if you want to continue processing on your data, let's say you get 10 records, and for each of those records, you need to send that data to, I don't know, a database or post it to an API or something. Prior to doing that, it would seem that you want to have an additional check to make sure that that filter is in fact, or that value is in fact appropriate for the your respective filter that you passed in. So we're not going to do that here, but again, it's just something to be aware of. But again, check out the documentation, and they have like their example and use case for how you should do that. So, but yeah, so very cool functionality, to be honest. Like very, very powerful. And if you go into your stream, you can see it looks like, I might have to, let's just go and get those messages, but not ZZ, because I don't want to pull back 100,000. So if we do that, now I'm getting those 100,000, but you can see, or I thought you could see, yeah, you can see on the consumer itself what your actual stream filter value is looking for. So you can imagine if you had multiple long-running consumers, that you could come into the management UI and quickly see, hey, what is this consumer filter for? You could also probably get that information from the HTTP API that they expose and pull that down. So, but again, very, very cool. Like there's a lot of potential to use this for fast retrieval of data, outside of a database, right? So like if you want to maybe have this as a layer before a database, so like, and get the data and then have like a database as a backup or something, I don't know, but it's very, very neat. Or maybe you potentially have complex joins in your database that could be slow to always execute on, despite indexing. Maybe there's just multiple joins across tables because the tables have been heavily normalized. If you want to maybe throw this in beforehand, maybe you do like some kind of service that gets the data and then publishes it to your stream, so that whatever consumer can then go to the stream first to get the data. I don't know. There's a lot of interesting use cases for why you may want to provide this filtering value, but it's very easy to do. And you saw, like, if I want to filter, I just pass in my filter value on the consumer, and on the producer side, I just pass in the header on the message of the extreme filter value. So very, very neat. And I have it specifically combined with days. So I'm able to not only filter on timestamp, but now I'm able to filter on a value, which is really, really cool. So that's all I wanted to show. I'll probably make another follow-up video about this, about how you would piece this into like a whole system design. But yeah, let me know if you have any questions, and thank you all for watching. See you in the next one.